as Vince McMahon famously says, the show must go on. So we were supposed to have a guest on tonight. Unfortunately, he didn't appear. So we hope everything is okay with him. But we're going to do a show, myself and Jack here today. And since Jack has recently joined the channel, we're going to find out a little bit about him, his wrestling background, and how this all came about. So, Jack, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate the opportunity to do some one-on-one background with you, Maurice.
Yeah. So, look, just tell us about yourself and how you got into wrestling, I suppose, originally would be the best way to start.
Well, I've been a fan of the business for a very long time. Early childhood, I remember distinctly when I was about 5 or 6 watching on a very small television in my parents' room a broadcast of All-Star Wrestling out of British Columbia, which was a former NWA territory run at that time by Sergeant Al Tomko. And it was coincidentally the first promotion to be broadcast coast to coast in Canada, and it was syndicated. So from there, that developed my fandom, and I, of course, grew up during the golden age of the WWF. Just post national expansion, Saturday Night Main Event, the Hogan era, all that good stuff, and ended up following by happenstance because of the fact that where I lived in Northern Ontario, we didn't have access to WTBS or NWA, WCW for the longest time. But my folks had a condo in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, and when I was able to access all of the WTBS, the NWA programming, and specifically first exposure to Ric Flair and the Four Horsemen, I was hooked, and it's been a lifelong interest since then, including working for several independents in terms of providing security. And that's how I initially hooked up with Great North Wrestling and the Hannibal TV channel that I regularly do interviews on.
Yeah, and a lot of people are big fans of your work on the Hannibal TV as well. A lot of people watching this will recognize you from there as well. There's just a question in for you there. Who was your first meet and greet of wrestlers?
Oh, wow. Well, I'd have to think about that, but I believe the first wrestler I ever met in person was Brian Adams' Crush. And a buddy and I had been at a show, and we're in a Subway about, I don't know, a sandwich shop about 1 o'clock, and Crush came in, and I was like, and did a double take because he was a very big man, and my goodness, what a nice guy. Didn't do the, or maybe we did, ran up to him, talked to him, blah, 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 but he couldn't have been nicer. He had that reputation. I wish I would have had the opportunity to interview him because he had an amazing career, big fan of Portland wrestling and that whole scene. But yeah, I would say that was the first one that I had any sort of interaction with outside of, the standard waiting around. I was one of those kids at the back of a show with a camera waiting to get the folks coming in and out, actually.
Excellent. Were you ever starstruck by anyone you met in person over the years?
I waited 3.5 hours in line one time to meet my childhood idol, and that would be Nature Boy Ric Flair. I had or still have, a 1986 Jim Crockett Promotions Four Horsemen satin baseball jacket, and I waited that long to have him sign it, and it was a quick process, but certainly was very gracious at that time. You could tell with that amount of people that it was during his run prior to retirement in WWE, And yeah, I have nothing but good things to say about that. He wasn't one of the more dismissive types in that category. Uh, in more recent times, I wanted to get an interview, and we're talking in recent times. I say about 10 years ago, 14. It was to me, it's all a blur. When you get to be this age, Maurice, it's not cool. But um, I had some credentials, and I was trying to get a hold and pin down Bully Ray during his big run that I was a fan of as a TNA World Heavyweight Champion, and yeah, he took the "I'm a heel" thing, being old school, so to speak. He took that really to heart. He was incredibly dismissive. I said, "I'm blah 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 here to do an interview. Are you ready for this now?" And he's like, "No," and he just took off. So anyway, in the podcast game, what it's like. Sometimes you get lucky with interviews, other times you don't.
And was that actually? Did you actually travel to an Impact? Was it press thing to do that interview?
Yeah, it was a card in Poughkeepsie, New York, which was loaded with folks, stars there, including Aldis was with them, Hernandez, who I did an interview about a week and a half ago with for the channel, excellent guy, and had it prearranged that there would be a period of time to access. I wish I had it, but I don't have the footage anymore. I got an interview with AJ Styles and Kurt Angle, and Bully Ray was supposed to be one of them, and he just yeah, that was it. He wasn't interested. I guess at that time he was still trying to protect kayfabe, which I can respect as well. But yeah, he was by far the most dismissive.
Mm. And I'm actually on the Impact Wrestling media team now as of a couple of months back. So maybe just maybe Bully Ray might show up sometime there. Might get to
You
mend fences.
Well, you know what? What a career. I'm also a big ECW fan who had the insanity or whatever you want to call it with my buddies in college to go to Swanson and Rittner and see some of the original shows, and definitely a fan of that product. So it would be very, very cool to get an interview with him. I'm also a big fan of, not so much in recent years. I've kind of lapsed in terms of following TNA, but the first 14, 15 years of the promotion, I definitely preferred their product, including the Universal Studios tapings, but the Fairgrounds tapings, I definitely preferred it to what WWE was putting out at the time.
Yeah, and like I've been watching a little bit of Impact lately, and there's some crazy shit going on. I seen a guy's mouth been stapled together a few weeks back. Did you see that?
No, would that be Mr. Callahan? Sammy Callahan? Is he
It
still working
was
with them? He
it
does that
was
hardcore
the
stuff.
zombie looking dude. That zombie looking dude that they have. He can dress up as like a Frankenstein type of guy. What's his name?
Okay, well
I
you
can't
got
remember his
me.
name, but he got his lips stapled together anyway a couple of weeks back, which is absolutely insane. I never
That's
thought
that.
I'd see that on TV, but
Well, not in 2023. I mean, back in the day, staple guns were a staple of
yeah.
the product, but definitely not anymore.
Another question there from Ibzan. Who brought you and made you stay into wrestling? Realism or larger than life personas? I guess what he's saying there is what made you stick with it. There's been some challenging times over the years.
Um, yeah, I would say once the product gets you as a kid, and you first have your fandom develop from there. There's lapses in and out, and I certainly lapsed from when WCW closed down, and WWE was the only good evening, sir, the only game in
Hi,
town.
Henry.
But I think the angle that there's Jake Walker from the Big Money Players. How's it going, brother? He's a man who does a lot of the on-air talent acquisition for the interviews that you see on the Hannibal TV with myself. I would say the angle that mesmerized me, well, was two things. It was when Savage crushed Steamboat's Larynx, WrestleMania 3, and when Mr. Wonderful turned on Hogan and pile drove him. I remember I was in late grade school at the time and got into a lot of trouble for trying to deliver
That's
pile
the guy's
drivers.
name.
PCO, of course. Okay, yes, a man. I'm surprised I gapped on that. I apologize, Pierre. He is an alumni of Great North Wrestling, and I've had some good conversations with him prior to being locked up for Impact about maybe coming in again. Uh, as I got older, again, NWA, WCW interested me, and then ECW hooked me. And then I had a lapse, as I mentioned, when WCW closed shop. And actually, just in the last decade or so, sorry, I did watch TNA and some independents, but that cooled off. But I find surprisingly, in my career, there's a lot of parallels between the wrestling business and wrestling psychology and what I do in the criminal justice system, and that will come out in a book that I have in a lot of stages right now, but can't be released till I retire. So it's kind of been it served me well. Some of the lessons of wrestling psychology, mostly the no sell, has really served me well in my business.
Thanks, Henry, there for the £5
Thank you.
donation. I seen your email earlier, Henry, and Henry's got a great channel. He talks about football. He talks about classic shows in the UK, such as Only Fools and Horses. I will come on your channel, Henry. It'll probably be next week, because this week is pretty stacked for me, and I'm back DJing now at the weekends as well. But we'll definitely fit in something next week, and it'll coincide with the start of the Premier League season. So looking forward to it. Thanks for that.
Now, in terms of there we are, PCO again. How are Impact Wrestling still around? That's a really good question, actually.
Yeah,
they have an interesting business model. Yeah, their ratings are I don't know, almost not measurable, but they are owned now by a Canadian company. Anthem Entertainment, I believe, is the name of the company, and they supply a lot of content that is streaming services, etc., need content. So I guess they're able to make it work somehow that way. And I don't think they have a lot of their talent on very long-term deals, and the talents can work indies as well.
Yeah, they're coming over actually to the UK for the first time, and God, it's a long time. They're doing 3 shows, Glasgow, London, and somewhere else now in a couple of weeks' time. But they've been cool with me. Like they said, one of you is part of the media team. They offer me interviews here and there. I got added to the AEW media team, which I told you a couple of years ago. And every interview that I've asked for, it's been declined. And AEW are pretty much in our backyard over here in a few weeks. Thought I might get a press pass.
Mm-hmm.
Nope. Not even an email. So
I guess
not
they
afraid
like
to say it, but that's the way it is.
No, they have a reputation of trying to really control their narrative. No pun intended for the other company, but yeah, that's surprising that they would issue that and not at least allow you to, given your scope and reach of Cheap Heat Productions, to interview anyone. Have you tried to reach out to Mr. Khan, or is
I
he?
Reached it. This is how it started. I did reach out to Mr. Khan. I got some form of contact email somewhere along the line, and it went to him. And then he pushed it from himself to the media side, said he wasn't available, but here, you can come on the media team. So I asked him for Jericho. I asked him for John Moxley when John Moxley was scheduled to do a few shows over here for OTT Wrestling. I thought that would work. He's coming to Ireland. I'm in Ireland. He's in AEW. I'm on the AEW media team. That got declined. And a few other ones here in between got declined as well. Same with WWE. I'm not going to mention the guy's name, but let's just say he's an Irish man on TV over there, and he's not a wrestler. And I thought I might be able to get an interview with him because he's Irish and I'm Irish, and we talk about wrestling here on this Irish channel.
Mm-hmm.
And he was up for it. he said yes, but then I had to go to their media team, and then they said, well, they didn't say no, they just didn't respond to 2 emails.
Mm-hmm. Well,
so that's the kind of level you're at.
That's absolutely nonsensical to me. I know we were talking before we came on air about how beneficial it is. The more platforms, the more you have your reach out, that they don't jump on that. Do you want to answer that one?
I have no idea. I have no idea. But it would have been a very difficult situation for me that weekend because as I say, I am DJing and I've booked in for a wedding that weekend. But I would have had to. I couldn't pass up being backstage at Wembley if it was offered to me. It wasn't. So, yeah, that's a story for another day.
Are the ticket sales? And I know I haven't heard a lot recently, but how are they looking? Still very strong.
83,000 tickets sold and not one match announced. Maybe there might have been one announced. Is Jericho and Will Ospreay? Is that happening? Did someone tell me that? But as far as last week goes, there was no matches and there was 83,000 tickets sold.
Wow.
Well, and we had a discussion between ourselves that Harry Smith, he should be involved in that show for historical purposes, if nothing else, even an appearance, even if he's not wrestling, it just makes sense.
That maybe they're hopefully Harry hasn't mentioned it to me, but of course, but maybe they're hopefully given how much of a fan Khan is and the appreciation for history, maybe he's hoping to bring him in as a surprise. But when you have 83,000 sold, can't argue with that. Whether they can do it again, that's the $1 million question, right?
You see, what they've done was they made a very good decision with that because you put one massive show on in Europe, and that's going to save you the expense of traveling and doing an arena tour through Europe, flying over to the UK, maybe flying over here to Ireland. It makes perfect sense because Europe's very accessible with airlines. So it's not just people from England going to be there, people from England, Ireland, Germany, Spain, France, Italy. I'm sure people from the States and Canada will be traveling to this, even the real hardcores, So like it does make total sense. And there was even a discussion a while ago that it might not even be televised, but that's been squashed now. It is going to be televised
on pay-per-view.
Maybe it's some kind of streaming service. I think it costs about $50. Not entirely sure what it is. I've given up research in AEW because they won't give me anything.
Well, let's. I mean, it's good for the those type of events that are monumental are good for the business for sure. So wish them all the success, notwithstanding their approach to some media outlets.
It's a success anyway at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. It's probably going to have a million gate.
I'll let you take that one first. Who's your dream interview? Like, I think what he means is as in a guest. Who would you like to interview more than anyone?
That is a very tough question. It's I know the name, and perhaps folks may not remember this fellow, but he's extremely hard to get a hold of. A guy by the name of Sadistic Steve Strong. He used to work for Stampede Wrestling. He had a cup of coffee in WCW as a Minotaur, not the other fella, but he also worked Puerto Rico and Montreal. Very influential guy in terms of the Canadian scene. I have no idea why he never broke through in terms of a major company, but he is the unicorn in terms of interviews for me. I tend to go. Hannibal does the big mainstream interviews and mainstream stars. I'm kind of like the niche guy on the channel who I'm given a lot of freedom in terms of who I book and who I talk to, thankfully. And I have a keen interest in that period, that 80s to late 90s period of wrestling, and some guys that the older fans would remember are not have disappeared, and he's one of them. So Steve, if you're watching, hit me up. It'll be a great interview. Yourself, Maurice?
Well, I had three on the top of my list, and they're obviously three kind of, we'll say, stars. Obviously, Austin, Jericho, and Kane. That's the three guys I'd love to have on this show at some point. I was so close to Jericho twice, and it was through a music agency. And you know yourself, when you're not dealing direct, there was problems. It was supposed to happen on Thursday. I had everything sorted. I found out on Thursday morning that it wasn't happening, and I was like, shit. But I didn't advertise it because just in case, especially with third parties involved, it's very. I told a few close people, and then I had to just say, no, it's not happening tonight. But
Yeah,
then I ended
that's
up working with him, not directly with him, but working for the band in Dublin. But I
Fozzy.
didn't really get much exchange with him because, yeah, I was doing a bit of media work for them when they were over in Dublin. But Chris was kind of just in and out. And it was mostly just working with the other guys there. And the other guys are cool as well. I just never got a moment to talk with him because he was kind of came in for a rehearsal, the VIP. Then he was gone till showtime. The support bands come on. Showtime, he sneaks in the back door, up on stage, and then gone again. Because he's just, he's such a famous guy that he has to be treated carefully as well, in a small environment like that.
Well, and I think he doesn't do a lot of interviews outside his own podcast, correct?
He does a few when Fozzy are maybe promoting albums and stuff like that. And when I was going to talk to him, I wasn't going to bombard him with wrestling, but I was going to pick a few things here and there because you have to remember the guy bought out a book. What was it, last year, the year before, with every single match he's ever had. So what more does he have to talk about wrestling? So it was going to be something a little bit different. And of course, he was in Terrifier 2 as well, that came out, massive independent horror blockbuster sensation in America and across the world. So there was a lot of different things I wanted to talk to him about, and I'm sure I will get to talk to him at some point.
I would add. I just forgot. I would add a very mainstream star to my my 1A and 1B interviews, and that would be Paul Heyman. I'm going to be interviewing Todd Gordon in August, and I'm really excited about that. But Paul Heyman too would be a major get, and I understand he also he doesn't have to, but he doesn't do a lot of independent media either. But who knows? Someday, you never know.
Yeah, I think the last interview I seen with Paul was on Ariel Hawani, I think on BT Sport over here. And like that's obviously major platform. So yeah. Maybe someday we'll get to those heights and maybe the guys will show up.
Well, that's also part of the challenge that I've experienced in the podcast game, and that's when you get folks that agree to come on or whatever, and then things happen. It's just part of it. You got to be flexible and bounce back. Would you mind if I segued into Great North Wrestling?
Yes, let's go for it.
Okay, so fast forward to a number of years ago, and I reached out actually through social media to Hannibal and asked if he needed any help with some local shows. I'm in the Eastern Ontario region now. And he said, yeah. I bounced in bars for a number of years and have done private security for other events. So I reached out and I started providing security for his shows and got, sort of plugged into the company that way. And then last fall, almost a year ago in August, Hannibal decided that he wanted to take a step back from the wrestling operations because COVID was quite devastating to, I think we ran one show in 2 years. And, that took a lot of the enthusiasm out of Hannibal for promoting. And let's face it, he did it for 15 years on his own. So he decided to take a step back and asked me if I would be interested in taking over the reins. And I said, I have no clue about how to promote a wrestling show, but somewhat of a background in management and business. So, might as well give it a shot. So we had our 15th anniversary show in May in Ottawa, Ontario, which was a success for Great North Wrestling. Brought in some really big and interesting names. And we just had a show July the 15th in Smith Falls, Ontario, where Harry Smith was there. Nunzio from ECW was there. The Canadian champion at the time, Jeremy Prophet, was there, who wrestled in AEW, but now the young phenomenon known as Magna McLaren, part of the Big Money Players stable, which I'm 1/3 of. He defeated Jeremy Prophet for the title, and he'll be moving forward with other matches in the company. Anyway, it was a tremendous success in Smith Falls, and we were going to run one in September, but due to some technical considerations, we had to push it off to November the 4th, and it will be in Renfrew, Ontario. Tickets available at ticketweb.ca, and we're going to be announcing some pretty big matches that the fans have come to expect through Great North Wrestling as of in the next few weeks and months to come. So I would encourage fans, if you haven't, to subscribe to the HannibalTV.com, and you'll get all the latest information. But in a nutshell, it's been a huge learning experience, and the independent wrestling game, much like podcasting, is a challenging one. And if you're in it for the love of the business and to entertain fans, then it's going to be successful for you. If you're in it to get rich and not expect any sort of headaches, then like the podcast game, it's not the right business for you. So yeah, I'm excited to continue to put on GNW shows in the future, and continue with these interviews when the guests show up.
But yeah, we will be back tomorrow night, because tomorrow night is a significant night. I might even have to get a beer out tomorrow night. Because tomorrow night I would be expecting in and around to hit 1 million YouTube views, which I thought I never would do. So
congratulations.
Yeah, it's going to be, I think it's got me maybe a couple of €100, but it's all good. But tomorrow there's going to be an interview at 5 p.m. Eastern with Bill Pierce is going to be here. I think Mario is going to join us as well for that one. And then at 7 p.m. I'm going to be interviewing Bull Buchanan. And I was trying to get a little reunion going for him, but it's not looking too good. But I won't spoil anything. There's still one man who's a pretty big guy that may say yes to a reunion with Bull Buchanan tomorrow. We'll just have to wait and see.
And fans, Bull Buchanan, I've interviewed him. What an incredible storyteller. Great guy. You don't want to miss it. He's very, for a guy who's accomplished as much as he has in the industry, he's very humble, down to earth. And like I said, very, very interesting story, both in terms of his wrestling career and later endeavors. So you don't want to miss that. Notwithstanding, you know what? 1 million is a big deal for anyone in this podcast game. So you deserve full kudos for that. And I'm looking forward to contributing in some small part to the endeavor moving forward.
Yeah, we'll aim for the 2 million by Christmas. We'll be grand. We'll get that.
100%. We get Jericho and Paul Lee on, we're done. We're good.
we can hope.
Yes, sir.
Ever noticed that Nunzio looks a little bit like Glenn Quagmire from the Family Guy series? Jesus.
Yeah, Mr. Hodgkins pointed that out before, and come to think of it, he sure does. But I'll tell you, he was a pleasure to deal with and put on. He's in his early 50s now, but I'll tell you, you wouldn't know it based on the matches that he was in Smith Falls. He can still go, and he was an absolute pleasure to deal with. I can't say enough good things about little Guido.
Excellent, Jack. Look, it was a nice little catch up for people, get to know you a little bit better, even to get me to know me a little bit better, because normally I'm just interviewing guys here, and I kind of miss sometimes that kind of personal touch with people that are watching the show. So we might, going forward, we might do one of these shows every so often when our guests don't show up.
Hey, and you know what? We could branch out and make it a sort of, I was thinking about this, and I don't know if you suggested it or it was just kind of an organic idea, but if the guests don't show up, we could kind of do a This Is Your Life without the guest and run down their major accomplishments.
That's what we were going to do for Brian Costello, and fair play to Brian. He did come on the other night amongst technical difficulties, and I look forward to part two of that. And I don't know why he was so like. I don't know if he's nervous about doing interviews. I just think that he maybe just doesn't want to do a lot of them. Go back to the old school mentality. But he's a great storyteller as well. And if you haven't seen that one, check it out.
Yeah, that's a good point you raised there, Maurice. Is that the old school guys? Some of them. I mean, look at the last Dark Side of the Ring, where it was Bam Bam Bigelow, and Taz was recounting how they put together the spot where they went through the ring, and he dropped the belt to Bigelow, and he goes, oh, I feel dirty recounting this. He goes, I'm so old school. And there's guys out there still that have they're conflicted that they feel they should still protect the business, and you see that even in some that you interview, they go into a little bit of detail, but not too much. So it's a challenge as an interviewer to know how to straddle that line with some of the fellas to get information that the fans are interested in, and yet I'm all like you, and I think that's what sets you out from some in the crowd as well. I'm all about being respectful, and whatever the folks want to talk about, that's cool. If they don't want to talk about anything else or certain topics, we're not gotcha reporters, so we have to respect that and kind of tailor our approach depending on the subject. So yeah, some definitely still have that inclination to protect the business.
Yeah, I find that when you go into these kind of niche things, that they kind of develop into a story. And before we finish up, we'll do two examples from two shows we've done recently. And you asked Chris Nelson the Perry Saturn question, and then that spiraled into an untold story, as you said. And then it was the same. We just happened to bring up Muffy, and it turns out that Chris Nelson was backstage and he done the segment, and now there's articles going around saying that Stephanie paid a guy $500 to fat shame him, which
Yeah,
is kind
that's
of
awesome.
clickbaity in a way,
Mm-hmm.
but that's the kind of stuff that's out there, and we kind of strive to be in the news, but in a kind of a positive and maybe funny sense.
Well, and also notwithstanding some of the problems that we have with there tends to be a rule that sometimes the individuals that were more on the fringes of the industry, and not saying that either of those individuals are or are guests that will hopefully get rescheduled for tonight, but the more on the fringe they are, the more difficult they are to have them make the interview or whatever. But I think it's I'm personally interested in talking to individuals that maybe we're not the huge star, the huge act, because a lot of that's been covered before. But Mr. Nelson is a great example. What a wealth of knowledge and experience, largely untapped, and you can raise one discussion point, boom, out comes other stories that haven't been told. So I find that part more exciting, notwithstanding, and with all due respect to the stars and asking them about their experience, headlining whatever WrestleMania or whatever. That's great and perfect for the larger genre to get that information out there over and over again. But the kind of the hidden gems and the individuals that may have been overlooked, there's a definite audience for that too. That Cheap Heat has definitely started to pioneer, and more to come.
Yeah, and I've been doing my research, and I'm scouring the internet, and I'm going to find guys that I've never done interviews before, and there's a couple of them coming up. Not going to mention them now just in case they're watching, but there should be two in the next couple of weeks anyway, and you're doing one as well, actually, next week as well.
Yeah.
Next Tuesday, isn't it?
Yep, a big one that
So,
I'm excited about for sure. A guy that's done a lot of work in the classic period. That I've got tons of questions already. Looking forward to it.
mhm. Jack, does IRS know that you borrowed his briefcase?
I don't know. I don't
Jack,
absolutely. We'll definitely do that as well. I would be more than up to do a reverse deep dive interview on the Hannibal TV. As for the briefcase, well,
I don't think I'm a big enough guest for the Hannibal TV. We might skip that
oh,
one.
I disagree. But as for the briefcase, all I would say is that when I'm part of the big money players and viewing, strictly from an observer's point of view, the matches of the Canadian champion Magnum McLaren. If you come out on the outside of the ring and try to attack me, I have to defend myself. So if you haven't seen the match on the Hannibal TV between Magnum McLaren and a young upstart by the name of Josh Angel, and the Canadian title match against the great Jeremy Prophet, I suggest you check it out. It's the ringside area is no man's land, and you have to be prepared.
You may even see it on this channel. I'll talk to Hannibal about that because we did have the full show from your second last Great North Wrestling event. It's on this YouTube channel as well. So if he wants to send that over to us, we'd be more than happy to have it on here as well. And look, guys, thanks for your input in the chat tonight. Jack, what's Hannibal's view on Morris and his podcast? We're going to ask Hannibal that, but me and Hannibal have gotten along. He's done my show a couple of times. I had Buff Bagwell on my show, and he ripped Hannibal apart. And I said to Hannibal, look, this guy, I like Buff and I like Hannibal. Buff went off on Hannibal, and I just wanted him to know that Buff went off on him before he found out from somebody else. And then he was like, yeah, can I use that? So he ripped the segment of Buff going off at him and uploaded it to his channel, and it's called Buff Bagwell and Why He Hates Hannibal. And then Buff thought I was stitching him up for sending it to Hannibal, but he said it in a public place. So look, it's all good. The wrestling business is wild.
It's all fair game. Well, I know Hannibal really respects Maurice and his accomplishments, and is 100% supportive of the synergy between our channels. And I think it's tremendous. I always look forward to making friends and new contacts in this business. And when you find a quality individual like Maurice, you know it. And because unfortunately, as you stated, it can be a jungle out there, but there's still good people out there and opportunities to build bridges and expand everyone's reach and penetration.
Yeah. And anyone that is watching this that's on YouTube, work together, not against each other, because it's not me and the guy next door with his channel or someone else in Ireland you want to have a problem with. You want to look to the top and you want to take the top guy out. And we're not the top guys. Look further. Support each other. And I think I'll leave it at that then for tonight, Jack. Pleasure as always.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much.
Tomorrow night.
Indeed.
And thanks to everyone for watching.